So the restaurant of the future may look a lot different than you might think. And of course, when you look into the future in terms of food service, I think right now everything is on the table. We're going to get a chance to talk about that today. My name is Paul Barron, and this is the Barron Report. All right, so we're going to get into dealing with and understanding how the restaurant of the future is going to be changing. And with me today, I've got a partner at Kinetic 12, Mr. Tim Hand. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So for some of our audience, tell us a little bit about Kinetic 12, what you guys do. We're obviously going to get into your designs and kind of what your thoughts are about the future, but where are you guys going as a group there right now?
Yeah, we're a Chicago-based consulting firm that focuses specifically on the food service industry. We work with mainly manufacturers, but also operators and distributors. And we work on areas of what you sell, who you sell it to, and how you sell it. And we also work closely with IFMA, the International Food Service Manufacturers Association.
Great. And when you look at kind of where the market is right now, obviously things are shifting considerably between the supply chain and all the way into the frontline food service operations. Is there anything specifically that you guys have noticed in the past 6 months that have said, this is kind of an interesting track or an interesting trend that seems to be developing?
You mean aside from COVID?
Besides that, in terms of the food service side?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt what's happened has been a major bomb on the industry. And I think everybody's going through a re-examination of their business.
Yeah.
And so what we've done as we've talked to our clients and others is to kind of dig into what is the impact of this going to be short-term and long-term on the industry. And as you know, we've published a number of white papers and articles, including the restaurant of the future.
Right. All right, so let's touch on the kind of the concept of the Restaurant of the Future report. We're going to throw up a design that you guys did of some models around how the future might look. Kind of walk us through the diagram where you see the most opportunities for operators in the future.
Yeah, the idea was this, was to help both operators and manufacturers understand how COVID is applying pressure to the industry. And by kind of shining off the crystal ball and looking forward as to what a restaurant should look like, it helps people kind of understand the impacts of what COVID will be. And so as you saw in that sketch, there are 15 areas that we think operators are either looking at or they need to look at. And you can see as you look around from things around sanitization and safety to off-premise, the growth of off-premise such as curbside, simplifying the menu, streamlining and adding flexibility to the kitchen, those types of things.
I'm kind of curious on the flexible kitchen. That's the first time I've seen that, a design like that. What is the theme behind that? What's kind of the anticipation of what those might look like?
Yeah, well, flexibility, I think, is the key to business success for anybody's business. And in a restaurant, the flexible kitchen idea is to be able to kind of pivot or kind of squeeze the water balloon from in dining to off-premise, whether it's drive-through, takeout, delivery, or curbside, but also to change the menu. I mean, you don't want to get stuck in a certain type of food if you see your market going elsewhere, or if you're set up for breakfast, you need to extend your day parts into the afternoon. And ghost kitchens are, although they're an emerging segment, they're influencing how people think about restaurants. And the idea of having a kitchen designed specifically for off-premise, and so it gets at the idea of thinking about a restaurant, the structure of a restaurant, the menu, and the kitchen differently.
Yeah. We've had a chance to review a few operators that have kind of gone the direction of takeout and delivery only, much like the way of the pizza operators of the past, where they're running full service fast casual concepts, strictly, very small footprints, kitchens that can kind of spin on a dime in terms of how they operate and what kind of product they put out. Do you see that as a clear or major trend that we could see much smaller footprints kind of populating the land in the future?
Yeah, uh, definitely. And obviously, a lot of restaurants and restaurant companies are sitting on a lot of real estate and a lot of brick and mortar build outs. So
Right.
it's an evolution. The restaurant of the future idea is it was if you could start with a blank sheet of paper, a blank
Hmm.
piece of property, what would you do? And what we see is a smaller footprint, a smaller, more flexible kitchen, smaller dining space, much more
Yeah.
space devoted to off premise, which is a lot of things. It's not just drive through, but it's a space where people can pull up and get curbside delivery through a separate door. And what we've been seeing through COVID is people actually pulling into parking lots, opening their app there, ordering
Yeah.
online, and either having it brought out to them or then joining the drive-through line. So
Right.
these kind of COVID-induced reactions have implications for long term. The restaurant of the future is if we could redesign, if we could like take out the restaurant that's there and rebuild one, what would it look like?
Hmm.
And yes, it would be smaller and have more off premise and
Yeah.
all of the things we're showing.
All right. So, Tim, when you look at one scenario that we've kind of analyzed throughout the years is what Amazon has done with Amazon Go. I'm kind of curious if that could be implemented in the restaurant space. There have been a few, especially in the good for you or the healthy sector, that have gone into pre-prepared meals where it's kind of put into these chillers or into a pre-prep landing area. A customer comes in, they don't even engage with a cashier. They just grab what they want, and through their phone, it auto detects them, charges their, whether it's Apple Pay or some other NFC device. Do you see that as a potential trend in terms of how technology could be implemented for these stores of the future?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I'm a big fan of the quote that crisis is the only true catalyst of change. And I think that restaurants have been forced to rethink how they do business. And so we think of that as new streams of revenue.
Yeah.
Getting into takeout, delivery, and curbside for a polished casual that really only did a couple percentage of it, that's a new stream of revenue. But what you're talking about is
Right.
an interesting idea. It's like selling groceries. And I don't mean,
Hmm.
bags of flour, but if you specialize in a
Sure.
certain type of bread or meat, sell those. So the idea of getting into prepared meals, the idea of no cashier, of using technology like the Amazon Go store, I think those things are all on the table.
Hmm.
I think we're in for a really exciting time in the
Yeah.
evolution of restaurant design and business models and how consumers interact.
Yeah, for sure. Your thoughts on, because this is another business model that we have seen kind of evolve out of this, a concept out of Dallas called Modern Market, developed these kind of grocery kits, or, they're unprepared product, but it's raw grocery. Usually it's aligned with a certain meal construct, but they put them in boxes, and it's much, I think of this almost like the days of the milkman in essence. But you go in, you pick up, it's got bread, some meat, some vegetables, some seasonings and spices, and you basically carry it out like you would from a grocery store. Your thoughts on how grocery and the restaurant industry, these kinds of innovators, could be intersecting in the future?
Yeah. We've actually had some interesting discussion around groceries because I know there's been a lot of that in the news for restaurants. Personally, I don't think restaurants need to get into the grocery business. I think they have been selling their own proprietary products. Like you can go to
Right.
restaurants and buy their, Olive Garden's Italian dressing. I think restaurants should do more of that. If they have a proprietary product, or whether it's a bread or I said, a steak or something that's
Sure.
uncooked, they should get into those things. I think that's a logical extension into a new revenue stream. I
Yeah.
think the idea of meal kits is an interesting one, but I don't think they should go head to head with the meal kit companies. I think what they should do is take an example. If McDonald's, this may never happen, but if they put a meal kit together so that the consumer could take home a kit and make themselves a Big Mac. So
Yeah.
it's the Big Mac bun, the Big Mac sauce, the Big Mac patties. And I think people would have fun doing that. So they need to stay kind of close to their knitting. And if they're going to do a meal kit, do it on something that's consumers already associate with their brand.
Right. Yeah. Shake Shack did that with Go Belly, where you could do some Shack burgers at home.
Yeah.
Obviously, the bun, the meats, the different types of ingredients they have. So obviously we're going to see a ton of innovation in the front-facing side of it in terms of food service. Since you guys get a chance to work with suppliers on the backside, where do you see the most innovation occurring there in terms of the supply chain?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. I We do work with a lot of manufacturers of various sizes, and they are spending a lot of time trying to understand where things are going. Um, Clearly, manufacturers have been kind of spending a lot of time forecasting and reforecasting. If your business is down 50% and your kind of heads in a vice to fill the gap. Aside
Yeah.
from that, I think they're in a difficult place on innovation. They're continuing to innovate and to build their pipeline, but they're focusing on the things that they see restaurants need, which is flexibility, more kind of pre-portioned, ready to heat, ready to eat, ready to cook. They're focusing more on flexible items that can be used in more than one recipe because they know that operators are reducing the number of SKUs
Yeah.
coming in and focusing back on kind of the comfort foods.
Right.
There's been a lot of talk about sanitization in the kitchen, and I don't think it's been fully solved. They're going like, how, Mr. Manufacturer, can you help bring products that are more sanitized? I mean, what are we going to do? Wrap the case in a bag? There's cost implications to that. So I think manufacturers are going through a lot of work to figure out what it means for their innovation pipelines.
Yeah.
Another area
Sure.
that's been kind of the tip of the spear is limited time offers, or LTOs. It's kind of become the way of doing business in the last 10 years.
Right.
It's kind of put a lot of pressure on the supply chain. And I think if we can get tapered down on that, that would make it easier for everybody, but we'll see.
Right. Let me ask you, going away and back into the consumer side of it, obviously we've seen the immersion of the urbanized restaurant chain, the independent operator. Fast casual is a kind of a victim of this, where we've had all these restaurants concentrated in these urban centers. Now you have companies that are literally keeping their workforce out of these downtown areas all the way into 2021. I just talked to a group today that are keeping their entire workforce out of the office until after the first of the year. With those kinds of operations, and also with the kinds of shifts that we'll see in just the workforce patterns, do you see, or I should say, what do you see in terms of the kind of restaurants that are going to reemerge on the other side of this in these urban centers? What do you think we're going to see there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I think something that's very much on people's minds. I think what we'll see is an increase in the idea of the ghost kitchen, which is the
Right.
takeout or delivery only.
Yeah.
And so for those restaurants that already have dining rooms, where, let's say, 40% of their business is takeout, when things reemerge, I think they should realign themselves to a business model that's 75% takeout, delivery,
Right. Yeah.
curbside. I think they need to go in thinking about this right now and redesign with, I know there's cost constraints, their setup to allow for that, their menu to allow for that, and the technology and the apps to allow for that. I think if they open back up in January with the expectation that they're going to go back to the way it was last year,
Yeah.
I think they're going to be surprised.
Definitely not the case. Well, I see we're going to see a lot of reduction in real estate, because I think we're just going to see a lot more work from home numbers. I was talking to some analysts this past week. They're claiming that we could see as much as 30 to 40% less urbanized workforce, which would be a massive hit to the ecosystem for restaurants in downtown Chicago, downtown Los Angeles, you name it, any metro area out there that you have high-rise buildings that are only putting back 40% of their workers. With that happening, and urban sprawl kind of has already occurred, and we've talked about it on this show where we've seen a certain exodus moving away from downtown and urbanized centers. If you were a betting person and you were looking at developing a new restaurant chain, is it kind of a no-brainer that you're going to be looking at the suburban areas and markets that aren't as urbanized right now?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
It may be a no-brainer. And I think there's two concepts that we'll see emerge. The first is one we talked about, which is the, almost 100% off-premise restaurant, smaller footprint, designed for drive-through, takeout, delivery, and curbside. And the other is a virtual restaurant where it could be an existing brand or a new brand that's only sold online, only made in a ghost restaurant, or maybe in the back of an existing restaurant, right? So maybe Chili's rents out some of their space. And you can never go into a restaurant with this brand. You can only get it online and have it delivered or perhaps picked up from a kind of a ghost kitchen, semi-ghost kitchen location.
Yeah, for sure. I want to throw up our chart here, or the diagram again, and because there was a couple of points. The app order and pay, we've seen a lot of innovation occurring around curbside, and you kind of alluded to it. There's a lot of ways that consumers are hacking it, ordering literally from the parking lot. The big problem with fast casual, as you know, is in most cases they're in retail suburban centers that have 25 retailers, even though some of those retailers are falling out now. But you have limited parking and definitely not dedicated parking. Have you seen any technology that has started to assist in the implementation of that curbside component?
Well, aside from obviously the app technology about ordering. There's technology, geofencing type technology. Right. I'm not an expert in this. That will alert the restaurant to when you're in their space. So I think that's still an area. I mean, I'm not a technology guy. I'm a marketing strategy guy, so it's not my space. But I think technology will definitely be a solution for this. And I think what people want is they want a frictionless or hands-free. Yeah. They want fast. They want easy. They want to, not mess with credit cards. And especially if you're in your car, people like to. Yeah. Ideally, people want to drive and order as they're driving, which is, obviously fraught with some danger. But they want to pull into a parking spot. They want to order. Yeah. They want someone to jog out and drop the bag into their passenger seat. They want the bag to be stapled, and they don't want to open the window any more than 6 inches, and they want to get the heck out as fast as they can. Yeah. That is part of our future. And here's the thing about COVID. Some of these things are short-term implications, but when you have something of this massive of a crisis, there will absolutely be long-term business model changes. We've talked about some of those. Yeah. Food service is a portion of total food service, right? Or rather, takeout is a portion, delivery. Off-premise, everything is 40%. I think we can easily see that jump to 60% of the entire industry in a post-COVID world.
Yeah, for sure. Tim, it's been great having you on. Thank you so much for stopping in on the show today, talking about future restaurants. It's been great.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, and good luck with the show.
All right. Thank you. All right, so you guys are tuned in right here on the Barron Report. Maybe you're checking us out on iTunes or over on Spotify, or maybe you have actually joining us on the video portion of this show, which is over on YouTube. Make sure and hit the subscribe button. And of course, if you have a great idea for a topic that you'd like to hear on the Barron Report, you can do so by just sending us an email to producer@foodabletv.com, or hit me up directly over on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time on the Barron Report.